Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Thursday. It is April the 3rd, and I do appreciate you guys joining us for what might be kind of a cringe-worthy, kind of gross show, but I feel like it has to be done. Media everywhere, left and right, all the mainstream are freaking out about Liberation Day, about tariffs, about world markets crumbling, a recession inbound. Nobody seems to care that it's going to have to cost something to be able to claw back some of the ground that was lost over the years when it comes to things like, what do you call that thing? Oh, like inflation and all of the sort of nasty policies that have gotten us into this place, the sort of laziness. You know, it's always that way. When you've had a time of excess and you've been spending things you shouldn't, sometimes you got to pay the damn bill. And so anyway, I expect that to come down. So all of the leftist media are going to do one thing. They're all crying about tariffs. They're all crying about things costing more, even though that hasn't happened yet. And even though global markets, which is to say the stock markets and so on, they're all just betting. These are like massive casinos at the end of the day. They have nothing to do with the actual prices. Nobody is seeing a price change today. Nobody is seeing a cost of good change today, except the people that are actually in the buying end in the logistical supply chain. And that hasn't hit you yet. And it's not going to for quite a while. So they're all going to do the doomsdaying thing. In fact, the best headline of the day launched from CNN. Everything is blowing up in Elon Musk's face. Yes, the man who is worth more money than any human being in the history of human beings. It's all crumbling around him. Whatever will he do? Of course, it was written by someone who has a background in journalism and who lives in Brooklyn and who is a white female who probably has a cat and no husband. I'm not trying to poke fun at you people that are cat ladies, but you guys know what I'm talking about. There's a certain type of person that celebrates the decline of certain types, and that's what we're dealing with today. So instead of doing that, I'm going to be talking about the other thing, the sub-headline that is coming out everywhere, which is that the United States is very, very bad, not just because we're terrible about tariffs and not just because we're being mean to the global markets when it comes to having now reciprocal tariffs and charges on goods coming in, just like we would on the ones going out. No, there are travel warnings being issued around the globe because the United States is not friendly to trans people, proving that the leftist media thinks the rest of the world is just as insane as they are. So we're going to talk about transgender ideology. We're going to talk about states' rights. We're going to talk about a Supreme Court argument that is happening today in that sphere. And I think we're going to have a pretty decent show, actually. I think we got a lot of things to talk about, and let's go ahead and cover things that nobody else will at that point. Let's talk about a problem before we do, and that problem is about your personal data and what do you do to protect it. One of the ways you can solve the problem of your data being out there in the world is going to a service like Patriot Protect, and you can get there by going to patriot-protect.com/Kyle. You're seeing their landing page on the screen. You're seeing that you get a 15% discount if you use our promo code. It is the service that my wife and I currently have. There are data dumps and data breaches that happen on a regular basis. In February, Newsweek reported one putting millions of Americans at risk. This can happen in the private sector. This can also happen in the public sector. In other words, private companies that are gathering your information for various reasons, whether it be for criminal background checks, whether it be for drug tests, whether it be your medical information and so on, they can be breached, but also the federal government loves to get breached, and they give out things like social security numbers and full names and your home addresses and phone numbers and so on and so forth. And all of these things can compromise your identity because it allows criminals a way to impersonate you. It gives them an opportunity to call you up with credible information saying they know things about you, and so maybe you'll be more inclined to answer their questions. I keep getting these text messages. It's the one thing that I haven't stopped getting. They're from all these different Apple IDs trying to tell me that I owe some sort of toll to the state of Texas. I'm sure Texas had a data breach as well. If you guys want to try to stop this and crack down on it, patriot-protect.com/KYLE is a solution. They use a search and destroy protocol trying to scrape your data from all these data brokers that are out there, and there are hundreds of them. You can get them kind of locked down. Some things are always going to be public, but the things that can be cleaned up from these folks where the scammers go, you can use it by using a service like this. Again, patriot-protect.com/KYLE for their annual service. You'll get 15% off. All right, let's dive into today's show with all this kind of nonsense. Like I said, what a weird, we're going to cover the opposite of what the news covers today. And it's all blowing up in their faces, and this is the picture. Look how unhappy Elon Musk looks. He is contemplative, and he is sitting there, and God forbid it's not going to work out. What do you guys think? Is that likely? No. All right. So Allison Morrow is one of the writers over at CNN. She writes the Nightcap. She writes some of their financial news watch. And as I said, white lady out of Brooklyn, New York, who is very, very in touch with the world, I'm sure. All it took was losing $100 billion in 3 months to make Elon Musk change his tune on government work. That's the headline. The claim is that he's lost a ton of money. This is all not real money anyway, right? It's unrealized losses, unrealized gains. That's what they always want to do. You think that this guy is worried about that in his net worth? Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. The claim is that he's going to be leaving the White House, and he said that was fake news. I don't know. Who are we going to believe? CNN? Elon Musk? Just saying. The White House said on Wednesday that the Politico report that he was going to be leaving is garbage. They dismissed it as fake news on social media. The administration confirmed that he is expected to wrap up his stint as Trump's quote-unquote hatchet man, that's their words, not mine, in late May or early June, when his 130 days as a special government employee comes to an end. In other words, the term was always going to end, and it was always going to be inside of 130 days. So this is not actually an announcement. That's kind of like saying someone is doing a 90-day temporary duty rotation, and he's going to leave at 85 days, and they're like, he's leaving early. It's like, well, he's leaving like more or less like when anticipated. This was a cover story at CNN today. This is the great news that they want to do it. And why is it? It's because everything is going wrong according to them. They all have to go out there and parade this tariffs game. Again, I'm not going to get into it too much. What I am going to play you is a rather long clip of Stephen Miller being asked about tariffs and why they're important and why they need to be done. We're already seeing certain trading partners drop theirs, which is fairly well anticipated, that when you start offering them an opportunity, do you want to do business with the largest consumer in the globe, with the wealthiest country in the world? Or do you want to do what you want to do? You can, in sales, we used to have this expression. It's better to have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. And that means that if you offer a deal and you're a hardliner on it, you're not willing to negotiate, you're not willing to compromise, you don't want to have any flexibility in your pricing, in your offering, whatever it looks like, your delivery date, something like this. You know, there's always these different things that you could haggle on when it comes to making a deal. And I remember one of the great sales lessons I learned is that it's better to get a deal done than have 100% of your pride and no deal at all. Here's Stephen Miller talking about what's going on, why they think it's important, and that they're really willing to sort of bite the bullet. There are times when you can't compromise. In other words, you would lose money on the deal. You would actually lose other business in the future, things like that. They're just saying, like, fair trade is what we think should happen, that we've basically been in this spin of giving away the farm since World War II, that the United States has not been operating on an equitable trading ground. They've basically felt like guilty for the globe for our great success as a nation. And so he's going to make the argument on why they have to bring it back. So I'll give it to him. It's a little bit longer than normal. Like I said, it goes for like 2 minutes and change.
Can you talk about the president's historical view on global trade and the tool of tariffs or the use of tariffs that he envisions, not just through Liberation Day today, but how he's used it over the years?
Yes. Well, the announcement today is the most significant action on global trade policy that has taken place in our lifetimes. It's not even a close call. This is probably the biggest event that's happened on global trade since the very ill-fated decision that we are now reversing of knocking down all of America's trade tariffs and revenue policies that led to the offshoring and outsourcing of all of our industry. So this is the great reversal of that great betrayal, is how I would look at it. So in the 20th century, successive American presidents knocked down all of the policies that we had to protect American industry, and they did insane things like letting China into the World Trade Organization, as an example. And we watched all of our factories go overseas. This is the complete reversal of that. This is the great onshoring, the great reshoring of American jobs and wealth. So if you look at America today, we're totally dependent on foreign countries for the supplies that make this country run, for all of the essential goods, materials, manufactured products that make it possible for us to live our lives. Our cars, our electronics, all the materials that go into our homes, our buildings, our medical supplies, our entire supply chains are completely embedded in foreign countries. So if there's a national emergency of any kind, and a country shuts off an import or a foreign power embargoes a sea lane, we are then left defenseless, helpless, because of the decisions that prior leaders made that President Trump is now reversing to let all of these industries leave our country. And so what he's doing today is, for the first time ever, he's saying that if you have stolen our jobs and therefore threatened our national security, we will apply a reciprocal tariff based on the degree of your misconduct. So for countries like China, for example, they will see a very high tariff rate because they've engaged in the most egregious conduct that threatens our national security. For countries that have severe but not as severe misconduct, they'll see a moderate but not as high tariff rate. The effect, though, of those global tariffs will be that companies will have to move their production back into the United States. So factories will leave, whether it be Mexico or Canada or Vietnam or Cambodia or China or the European Union. They will come back to the United States to produce their products, to make their goods. And in so doing, yes, it will create jobs. Yes, it will increase revenues. But most importantly, it will restore our national security so that we will not be dependent on anyone else to survive and thrive as a nation.
All right, that's the argument, right? And we'll see how it plays out. That's what we have to do. It's bigger than that, though. It's even larger than that. One of the discussions that continues to be had in liberal circles that I keep seeing, this was on Bill Maher the other day, and I'm not going to play a clip from there because I feel like I'm heavy on Bill Maher half the time. He seems to get a lot of promotion, and he gets invited to the White House. If you say really nasty things about the current sitting president's family, you can still get invited to the White House. Isn't that something? Because he's so unfair and unreasonable, right? I want to play Mike Rowe instead. Because when you outsourced all those jobs, when you incentivized foreign nations and basically you incentivized companies to go to foreign nations where it was cheaper, where the labor was cheaper, where you didn't have to spend the high cost for American workers, and you could get away with prices because they came into the United States with no penalty on them, you destroyed something really incredible. I actually see a direct line with the outsourcing of American manufacturing jobs and that supply chain and that national security discussion that Stephen Miller is talking about. I see the exact same thread running through two income households now. The thing that Elizabeth Warren used to call the two income trap. In my lifetime, and I'm not that old, I'm 43 years old, and in my lifetime, it has become standard that most households will have men and women working, and they will outsource the raising of their children to the state. Right? That's what you've done when you put your kids in government schools. It's not a nice thing to say. It doesn't feel good to talk about it. But for those of you who have, I always end up getting sort of nasty complaints or people going hey, that's not fair. We didn't have a choice. Maybe not. Maybe you felt like you didn't. But you actually did. It just meant that you would have had to tighten your belts, live in a much smaller house, probably be without a lot of things for you to maintain the convenience of what you have. The trade is that oftentimes we see now the government is going to raise your kids. And so what is the most common thing that those of you who have conservative, let's say, adult children in their 20s, maybe their late teens, their early 20s, kind of going into the professional world, when you have adult children that stay in the same values that you do, there's one thing in common. They listened to what you said. They saw the values that you lived. And those of you that say, well, I sent my kid off to university and they came back hating me. How much time did you get to spend with them? I'm not trying to indict you. I'm trying to make you look at this as a broader problem. This is a social problem as well. The offshoring of jobs, the weakening of, let's say, the nuclear family, which we always heard about in the conservative circles in the 90s. If you devalue, if you bring women into the workplace and now you've watered down the workplace, it's good for the companies, maybe, kind of. It's bad for our culture. It's bad for our children. And that's why I see this this using of a woman holding a baby on the floor of the house the day before yesterday as the most disgusting prop. A political prop, using a child, an infant, saying mothers are so important. Accessibility. We need to make the Congress more accessible to new mothers and young families. F you, lady. That woman is a leftist Democrat. And that accessibility, that suicidal empathy, that is a vector. It is a means by approaching a sympathetic mind, a compassionate person. Good people, by the way. You maybe looked at it and went well, yeah, why shouldn't women be able to go and bring their baby to the workplace? Why shouldn't they be able to stay home and nurse their child? Because it's a 2-year term. It has a predictable start and a predictable end. And nobody made you be a congressperson. And anybody can be a congressperson. But only one person can be the mother to a child. One. You all know this instinctively. Which is why when you look at people, let's say Dave Rubin, I got no problem taking shots across at anybody. You look at someone like Dave Rubin, who went out there and outsourced the birthing of a baby. He and a partner contributed, I don't know, like their own gene pool to some egg donor that they bought, that they selected from a book. Like they're making a designer baby, had somebody else bear it and then took that baby from the mother. That child is forever going to not have a mother. Physically had a mother, knew 9 months of one thing, and then immediately taken away. That's the problem with surrogacy. That's the problem with IVF. That's the problem with all of these types of technologies. They can start off as doing something kind of good, but if you guys don't think that this is going to go somewhere ugly, you can look at it in the same way. The United States looked out there in the world and said, we are doing really well. The globe is suffering. It is rebuilding from a world war. How do we fix this? Let's go out there and make it easy for them to use the American consumer. You can come to America for very, very low cost. We won't tariff you anymore. It is our penance for being so successful. Here's where the cost goes. You ready? This is Mike Rowe sitting on with a mom's podcast. Men have left the workplace in this country by the millions because they are not being asked to do anything. For women that are upset, hey, how come men don't want to get married anymore? Because you've proven that you don't care whether you get married or not, because that is not the status quo anymore. The status quo in my lifetime was men got married so they could take care of families. Because there were even stories going back in my childhood in the cultural sort of norms, watching this on television and so on. The shotgun wedding. Do you guys remember the shotgun wedding? That's when a guy got a girl pregnant. They were interested in each other. They were screwing around because maybe they're high school kids. Now there's a baby on the way. Abortion wasn't an option because this was in the 80s when that was actually looked at as a really awful thing. Even in the 90s when it was the safe, legal, and rare crowd, there was shame associated with killing your child. So that made sense. And so what was your option? Dad holds you up with a shotgun and says, you're going to marry my daughter and do right by her. And that means you go and get a job. I have one of the greatest friends in the world who I saw as a brilliant young man with unlimited potential, who people thought was throwing his life away because he and his fiance got pregnant early on in his college career. Early on in his teens, or like right at 20. And everybody went, he threw his life away. Full academic scholarship, absolutely brilliant, high performer, good person, wonderful household, was engaged to a gal, and then boom, like suddenly they announced that they're pregnant. And he dropped out of college, okay? Because that's what men do. And he got a job, and he started working, and he supported his family, and they had another baby, and he finished his college degree, which is difficult, but I watched him do it. And I was so proud of him for being a man at an age when I was not able to. By the time that I even figured out what being a man was, my best friend growing up had 2 children, a wife that he supported. He's still married to her. They've been married for my entire adult life before I even entered adulthood. Why? Because that was the status quo. And we lost that. Here's Mike Rowe talking about this. This is a much broader problem. And Stephen Miller is only talking about the economic and maybe the national security implications. Having the alternative there of trying to also bring back the ability for men to be the thing that men are meant to be, men who carry burdens. This is why Jordan Peterson was so popular before all the popularity, because men heard it and went, I need meaning in my life. How do I find that? And he said, pick up a heavy burden. Do something that is very hard. Things that you don't even know if you're going to be equal to the task. Go out there and carry that burden. And do it and give meaning to the suffering that is everybody's lives. We all have to suffer. It doesn't matter if you have the most amazing life. And I have a pretty amazing life as far as that goes. And yet my family suffers all the time for small things and big things, just like yours. Some of you out there have a much heavier burden to carry. If it doesn't have any meaning, it gets unbearable. But if you know why you're carrying it, you go, okay, this is my lot in life, right? And there's an example that most people can look at. I actually had a discussion with the folks at Catholic Vote. I'm editorializing a little bit longer here, but let me just say this. One of the things that I honed in on was the idea that the cross also looks an awful lot like the crosshairs in a target, on a rifle, on the reticle. And what do we use a cross or reticles or crosshairs to do? You line up on a target and then you seek out the goal. And so If you're going to be a person who is Christian, or if you're going to live in a nation like America, which is a Christian nation by values, just go back to where it comes from. This is not negotiable, really. Western society at large has Christian values. You don't have to like it. You just have to look at history and accept it because it is not really negotiable. Yes, there were deists that helped frame the Constitution. I understand when and where these things came from, but Charlie Kirk does a pretty decent job of negotiating this. They didn't consider the federal government to be the beginning. They looked at the states as being the power, and almost all the state constitutions required a declaration of faith, just so you guys are on the same page as me, okay? But all of these things, like finding that burden and giving it a meaning, naming that meaning, and then carrying it on that behalf. That's the story of the cross I bear. I dropped it on Betty Johnson the other day. I will put it over on our locals channel for you guys. Little segment. If you don't know the cross-eyed bear story, it's one of the funnier stories of moving to Oklahoma and being a guy who grew up in Dallas and having been born in California. I wasn't familiar with the expression in the way that it was said in Oklahoma. And I heard Senator Mark Wayne Mullins the other day on Benny Johnson's show just before I went on talking about a scapegoat. The word is scapegoat. And he said a scapegoat, which is funny because he's a country guy. And in Oklahoma, people say funny things all the time. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have a truth. It just means that sometimes we can laugh about things and they still have real meaning. And the cross-eyed bear was one of those stories. It reminded me always that there is this expression that we all probably in some way or another have a cross that we bear. So I will give you the cross-eyed bear story just because it's charming and it's funny and it reminds me of my old friend and boss, Scott. This is Mike Rowe talking about the implications of these tariffs. He doesn't even say it. He's not even talking about tariffs. I don't think he's even made the connection at this point in time when he's talking in this particular clip. But we're making that connection right now. The imposition of tariffs are an attempt to reclaim something that we've lost over the last, let's say 80 years. And some of it is that power of men to be able to be a wage earner, doing blue collar jobs, having a technical skill set. So that's why that's why the message of Mike Rowe always resonates with me.
It's a horror story, but it's important to read because it's true. And the stat that sticks with me and worries me today is 7.2 million able-bodied men today in their prime working years are not only unemployed, they're affirmatively...
Is this just in the United States?
Yes.
7.2 million.
7.2 million. This number has never existed in peacetime before.
Yeah.
But right now, 7.2 million men officially not even looking. Now, that's bad, but what's worse is the answer to the question of, well, what are they doing? Are they volunteering with the JCs, the Kiwanis Club, the Lions Club, the Boy Scouts, Skills USA, 4-H? Are they involved with their church? 2,000 hours a year, on average, on screens.
Another big issue with moms.
I bet. So, look, all problems are micro and macro.
Right.
Micro works as my foundation. Micro's me. I try and keep it small and granular. So, each one of those 7.2 million men, frankly, I'd like to talk to them. I'd like to show them.
How do we find them?
I'd like to show them the work. I'd like to say, look, do you understand that there's more to a job than the paycheck? Do you understand what's happening
but
to you?
But this is why I think
I don't need to hear the woman explain it. He just told you it's more than a paycheck because it's meaning to the suffering that exists in your life, which will always happen. There's something very strange when you go do like a brutally hard day's work and you finish and you get to wash off the dirt and the sweat and everything else. You look around and you go, yeah, I accomplished something today. I made the world something slightly different. I used the talents and the tools and the sweat and the energy. I converted the food that I've been eating into a production that can be seen by other human beings. They will know that I was here because I did this thing. That's what it's about for most men. It's great. Like, go out and weed your yard and look at the yard afterwards and just go, I did that. Even if you don't like weeding, you will like it. I hate weeding. I hate the stickers in my hands. I did it so much when I was younger. I feel like I just don't like it. Now I've got a really good tool that I found that's making it better. The fact is, this is really critical. This is critical stuff. It's so simple. We're going to pivot to a sponsor because they pay the bills here. And more importantly, if you think that this is going to go really well right away, you're probably wrong. So I do think that Stephen Miller is hedging his bets with that. He's saying it conservatively that we could deal with some problems because of the way these things in the short term. That's the nature of what happens when you fix things. Austerity measures always cost you something. Great way to remember that. You might as well make sure you're prepared. You can go to preparelikekyle.com. When you've seen disaster strike before, the first thing that happens is grocery stores will empty their shelves. We do get a lot of produce from overseas in various places. The worst time to prepare for any disaster is in the aftermath of that thing. It's already too late. And smart Americans will trust My Patriot Supply. That's the ones that we trust at this house. I have a whole closet full of their emergency foods. I recommend you guys do something similar. Make sure you've got that handled. It is peace of mind. That's what it builds. They're making it easier than ever. Right now, you can get the 4-week emergency food kit. You can get it today, and you're going to get an additional 4 bonus 72-hour food kits completely free. It's almost 2 weeks, about 12 days worth of bonus meals, and you can scatter them to the places that you want. You can put them in a toolbox when you're on the job site. You can put them in your go bag. You can put them in your truck so you have something if you had to hit the road. If you got stranded somewhere, it's a great idea. There's still snowstorms happening in certain places in America. It's incredible because it's hot here. Make a good choice. Invest in that. It's 2,000 calories per day. The meals are easy to prepare. They last for up to 25 years. It's peace of mind. You don't have to panic. No empty store shelves. Just know that you've got them. Stock up today before the deal disappears. And when the emergency foods are needed, you'll have them. That's the best thing. Food goes, you'll have it. Preparelikekyle.com. Again, preparelikekyle.com. Claim your emergency food kit, those 12 additional days of free food. It's a great deal. It's like 50% more than you normally pay for. Preparelikekyle.com. Check them out. All right, we're going to continue onward with the other thing. I see Democrats suddenly have a new respect for the rule of law. And I know that because MSNBC is covering it. And here it is. Look at this nonsense. Judge's dismissal of Eric Adams' case shows the importance of judicial independence under Donald Trump 2.0. This is truly rich stuff. You're seeing Eric Adams there holding Kash Patel's book, Government Gangsters. I don't even know what that means. That was not the picture actually used as the headline for this. This is Jordan Rubin. He's one of the sort of simps over at MSNBC that writes these like just partisan garbage pieces. The Eric Adams dismissal saga epitomizes the second Trump administration. For one thing, it's a prime example that the Justice Department, led by Donald Trump's personal lawyers and his criminal impeachment cases, wielding the awesome power of the federal government for the president's political ends. But in the wake of Wednesday's permanent dismissal, they did a dismissal with prejudice of the corruption case against New York City Mayor. It's another thing that shouldn't get lost is that this sort of chapter is a testament to judicial independence. They suddenly care about the judiciary again, as long as it's working on their behalf. There is no standard like a double standard, and Democrats live on this. Here's Ted Cruz saying as much on the floor of the Senate, discussing how nice it is to find these people have suddenly discovered that that laws should matter and that rules should matter and that maybe looking out and making sure that judges are able to operate with impunity should matter.
Is the tribute that vice pays to virtue. I have to admit I'm enjoying listening to my Democrat colleagues suddenly discover the virtues of the rule of law after 4 years where they brazenly supported the most lawless Department of Justice and the most politically weaponized Department of Justice our nation has ever seen. We just heard the senator from Rhode Island talk about the imperative of protecting judges. And yet not a single Democrat senator cared about the violent protesters that showed up outside Supreme Court justices' homes, including, I might note, female justices like Justice Amy Coney Barrett, threatening their family. And Joe Biden's attorney general didn't do a damn thing and refused to enforce the law to protect those judges. Why? Because he agreed with the violent protesters and he wanted to intimidate and threaten those judges. Professor Bray, under our Constitution, who should decide elections, the voters or unelected judges?
The voters are the ones who should vote in the election according to the laws, and the laws sometimes have to be applied by the judges if there are cases.
And under our Constitution, who is charged with making policy decisions, elected representatives elected by the people or unelected federal judges?
I think the question of policy, Senator, is a little broader than the particular case. So the laws should be
How about this? Judge temporarily restores funding for legal aid for migrant children. Migrant children, also known as illegal aliens, people who entered the country illegally and then are not of legal age. They suddenly care about judges. Why? Because the judges are ruling sympathetically to all of their crappy pet projects. Does it seem like a way that you would be able to operate as a free nation, as a sovereign nation, to be able to let unlimited people coming in and then imagine that children are of value to you as a nation? Again, weaponizing your sort of belief in family. Then imagine a bunch of hoodlum kids are going to be trying to come into your backyard. You didn't invite them in. They went through the fence. They climbed in. Maybe they picked the lock on your padlock. They're playing in your pool. They're throwing rocks in there. Whatever. I've done some things that were dumb when I was a kid. I can imagine throwing rocks in somebody's pool. Just saying. I don't know if my parents ever got that call, but let's just say there were people involved in destroying some neighborhood property because we were dumb kids. And guess what? We got told about it, and it didn't end up real well for us. We were disciplined appropriately. Judge has restored $200 million. This is a policy decision to groups that have collectively received federal grants that were partially terminated, ending funding for legal representation and the recruitment of attorneys to represent migrant, aka illegal alien, children's in immigration proceedings as they came into the United States. 26,000 children receiving legal representation through the funding, and that's why they want to get it. These are all NGOs that all are sympathetic to lib causes. That's why they care. Yeah. So they're going to use your kindness, and they're going to make it about weakness. That's why they love this. They don't really care about women. They care about men masquerading as women. That's why this story still bothers me. I find it to be very off-putting. And here you have the story that we talked about yesterday. And the coverage of it by MSNBC is pretty telling. Mike Johnson's humiliating loss shows how weak he is without Trump. Mike Johnson, again, what was the story? He lost on a rule discussion on whether or not we were going to have proxy voting for quote unquote new moms. That's the plan. You guys think this can't be weaponized and gone further? That this is really about moms with babies in arms? She already admits it. This is Brittany Peterson, representative from Colorado, talking about how she made a really hard decision. You're seeing that the ABC is carrying it. It was a difficult decision to bring her infant son. It was a difficult decision to let her child be a political prop. Here's Mike Johnson, then I'm going to give you Brittany Peterson, and then I'm going to show you what this is probably really about at the end of the day. Because do we not have an imbalance of geriatric people that are basically at failing health levels to the point where they're nearly dead in their chairs compared to like the number of new moms? There's no way you can tell me that this is about new moms when in history, per Brittany Peterson herself, there have been 13 members of Congress that have ever had a baby while they were serving as congresspeople. 13 congresswomen in history. You don't change rules for 13 people. You protect them and you try to help them out and you let them know, like, look, well, okay, we have all these services available to you. Or by the way, you can resign like Mike Waltz did. You can resign like Gates did because he thought he was going to be the attorney general. You can resign and you can have somebody else run in your stead. It is not your birthright to hold on to an elected office that you literally get for 2 years per the way it's described in Article 1. Mike Johnson talking about the loss here.
Well, it's a very disappointing result on the floor there. A handful of Republicans joined with all the Democrats to take down a rule. That's rarely done. It's very unfortunate in this case. 96% of House Republicans voted against proxy voting because they believe it's unconstitutional and they agree that it would open a Pandora's box. And so that's what we just saw. Let me just make this clear. That rule being brought down means that we can't have any further action on the floor this week. That means we will.
So they're going to shut down the work because of that. So these people knew what they were getting into. Yes, was it tethered to it? It was. Do you guys like that? Maybe not. How about this? Are you gonna be okay with the fact that Republicans who are not conservatives, even if they claim to be, are going to side with this lady doing political theater with a baby? This is Brittany Peterson standing on the floor with an infant who looks none too comfortable at 9 weeks old. I remember having friends tell me that they took their babies to a bar within the first week or two of them being alive and thinking that their kid was going to be messed up. And it turns out, guess what? They are. If you use your kid as a prop or you don't change your life because of your child, it's going to come back and you will have a failed child. That will be on you. That will be your fault. All of us have sat there and judged our friends for their poor parenting. Have we not? And we judge ourselves too, if we're being honest. Like, we're like, damn it, I really blew that. I really screwed up. I really shouldn't have gotten angry about this. I should have been more compassionate. I should have spent more time doing these things. How many people don't look back and have this? Do you think that this Brittany Peterson is going to look back one day and go, I cannot believe the audacity of me taking a 9-week-old baby and standing up in a virtue signal to try to get what I think is really going on here, old people in their 80s who are no longer fit to be able to serve anything. They can't even be a Walmart greeter because they can't stand long enough to do that job. Mitch McConnell comes to mind. You think she's not going to look back and regret this? I hope she one day does. I'm sad that she did this, mostly for her child, because I don't really care about her. I don't care about adults that have decided to make bad decisions.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this rule, which restricts moms and dads from doing their jobs after welcoming a new child. Like so many of our colleagues, it's one of my greatest honors to be a mom. I have 2 little boys, a son named Davis, who's 5, and my little guy here, Sam, who's now 9 weeks old. It's also one of my greatest honors to have been elected by my constituents to represent them in Congress. And I can tell you, after being a mom here and being only the 13th member to have ever given birth while serving in Congress, voting member, I can tell you we have a long ways to go to make this place accessible for young families like mine.
I am absolutely disgusted, especially because I can hear that baby who's a little bit fussy, who doesn't feel great about being out there, who's being carried awkwardly because she's standing in front of a freaking podium because that's not a natural thing for you to do with your baby. Where's the dad on this one? What dad said, hey, you know what? Yeah, go ahead and use our kid as political theater. I won't even post kids' pictures. I have the cutest kids in America, in my estimation. Incredibly cute. I'm constantly calling grandparents and saying, look at what your grandchildren are doing. Look at what your lineage looks like. They're doing this thing today. They're running around with their little butt hanging out because we're potty training and we're not wearing pants. So we've got that going on at the house. So we got little baby butts running around. We got big sisters that are taking care of the little ones and carrying them around. We've got them driving around in plastic Jeeps and showing each other, and they're riding and they're having the time of their lives, like spinning around the backyard. They're adorable. They're freaking adorable. And they are click-worthy as anyone else out there. I won't put them online. I won't tell you what their names are about. I'll tell you their names and I won't show you pictures of them. Why? Because they get to decide their own discussion. They get to go out there and not be props of their father and their mother in the world. They're really important to me. They're the most important thing. And if it came down to this, what I do for a living, and them, I would go find a job digging ditches. No problem. That was one of the discussions my wife and I had to have before we lost the job at the Bureau. What do we do next? She's like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. That lady's dragging this kid out there. He doesn't have a choice. Little Sam, who's like fussing and making noises and cooing and all the kind of things. That kid needs to be somewhere warm and safe and hanging out with his mother. And instead, he's standing in that nasty, demonic pit full of evil scum who are self-interested, like just the nastiest creatures in America. You want to see one of them? Because I'll punch both sides. How about Mitch McConnell, who just voted in this like show trial against the tariffs? Mitch McConnell, who 2 years ago did this, and if you're listening to it, it's going to sound really awkward because there's a bunch of dead air. Just imagine a 90,000-year-old man barely standing, completely shutting down from his cerebral cortex, no longer working, and blinking, looking like a cartoon of Yertle the Turtle. That's what's going on here. He's wearing a blue blazer. Let me do the Kamala Harris. He's a 1,000-year-old man with white hair, glasses, a weird face, no chin, a blue shirt, and a blue blazer. Here's Mitch the Glitch 2 years ago.
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator Benny.
What you can't see if you're listening is that he is gripping the podium he's standing at for dear life so he doesn't fall over, whether he had a stroke right then or whether he was just falling apart or whether he was just an old person that doesn't like have any grasp of what's going on anymore. That man doesn't need to be dealing with the stress of trying to make laws in this country. You want to know how it's going right now? He's got a leg cast on. He's basically unable to speak. This is what proxy voting really leads to. Because how far away are we from having the interns and the staffers who actually control a lot of what goes on in Congress? You know, the ones that are banging each other on the tables in the butt. You remember all that crap that we saw the other day? Like this at the end of the Biden administration when we had leaked videos of people doing debaucherous things in our nation's capital, those people can run the show as long as they've got a Mitch the Glitch who's holding the title in name only. Here's Mitch being wheeled out like yesterday. Nick Sorter shared this video. Some, enterprising young female reporters out talking and trying to get an answer from the man who probably can't do anything because he just is wheeled around with he's weekend at Bernie's. He's worse than Joe Biden was.
How are you feeling, Leader McConnell? How are you feeling, Leader McConnell?
For some reason, the sound of the gate in the background, if you're listening to that and you're hearing like, is there like a wrought iron gate that's just swinging in the wind? Yeah, and that's the sound of emptiness that's going on inside of Mitch's empty brain at this point. Functionally not capable of doing anything. I don't wish this on that man. But he has chosen to do the Dianne Feinstein, where they basically try to die in the chair on the Senate floor, like that's some sort of a moral victory. That is not the same, by the way, as getting like eaten by a shark if you're a surfer. My brother and I had this discussion a long time ago because I always thought that was a terrifying fear, getting taken out by some like piece of marine life. And he's like, if you're a surfer and you spend all your life in the ocean and that's what you love, and it takes you out one day and you're claimed by the ocean, that's like a soldier or a warrior dying in battle. That's like Valhalla for them. And I went like, maybe. This is not the same thing, because in that case, it's just you. It's your life and you choose your end. Right now, Mitch McConnell is representing an entire state and somebody else is doing the work because there's no way that man can do it. It's worth actually tuning in to see that if you guys haven't seen these videos. They're unbelievable to me. And so when you have that happening, of course, you're going to have the suicidal empathy of these lame, lunatic, crazy leftist women saying, oh, there's an opening here. I can bring a baby in. I can pry it in. We're going to do transgender nonsense. We're going to do all the other stuff. We can make that happen. You guys want to know who's not into that, by the way? Let me just plug my buddy Garrett because I haven't done this in a while. But if you guys want to support my friend Garrett, who still doesn't have a job, by the way, and I talked about him on Benny Johnson's show yesterday, the-suspendables.com is the merch store. It benefits me not a bit. It keeps my friend busy. It allows their family to continue doing the thing they're doing. Hope that Bongino and Kash Patel will do the right thing and bring him back, at least make him whole, give him an opportunity to decide whether or not he wants to work for this organization. It's a stroke of a pen away. The-suspendables.com. There's t-shirts there. There's pins. There's all kinds of neat stuff. I'll do a video on it later on. This is our black pin, which we've given. I gave one to Alex Jones the other day because I think that's cool. Owen Schroyer has them. A couple other cool people. Dan Bongino has one. The-suspendables.com. The upside down badge is what you'll know you're at the right website. If you do the other one, you'll be at a hockey thing. Check them out. Use promo code Kyle if you want. I guess you'll save 10% there. If you don't want to save 10%, you don't have to. Nobody's making you. And again, all the money doesn't go to me. I get paid nothing for bringing it up. I just like to keep my buddy working if we can. The-suspendables.com. Distract my friend Garrett O'Boyle from all of this stuff. Let's go to the Texas legislature, shall we? We played you a clip the other day of Brian Harrison. I actually got to listen to him in a Twitter space last night, or an X space, and he was doing a great job speaking extemporaneously about his issue. And I saw this at the same time. Texas is supposed to be a conservative state, right? I understand that we've got a lot of Californians in. This is what happens when you open the door for demons to come in. They start preaching at you, and I cannot help but see the same thing. The temptation of Christ in the desert, it starts off one way. It's like, I'm going to offer you the thing you need to survive. I'm going to offer you the thing that you want to be able to thrive. I'm going to tempt you by using the words of God against you, using scripture to try to compel evil. You know, if you watch, there was a movie that was made, Steve Deasy did it the other day, and I know I've played it here. Demons speaking about scripture because they understand the power of being able to lie using it. This woman is doing this. This is an invocation in a supposedly Republican-run house in Texas where they are now going to do the Beatitudes in a bastardized version to protect transgenderism. We're going to tell you how that's going as well, because I've got some interesting clips from someone that lives of TikTok exposed.
And where their service is unfaithful, we beg for your forgiveness. They know not what they do. God, forgive them for placing party over people. Forgive them for lining their pockets and campaigns with bribes from billionaires. Forgive them for caring more about re-election than about the people they are elected to serve. Lead them to repentance, to turn toward you, the God who through Jesus Christ reminds us, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you and when they exclude you and revile you and defame you. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation." God, save these leaders from the temptations of evil and give them the moral courage to stand with the poor, the hungry, and the grieving. We pray especially for the most vulnerable people in our state, our children. Guide these lawmakers to protect all our Texas children, regardless of religion, race, socioeconomic status, gender identity, disability, citizenship, by funding and supporting our neighborhood public schools with the abundant resources at their disposal. Help them to see in each child's face their own children's faces, their own grandchildren's faces. Help them to make the education they want for their loved ones a reality for every single child in our great state, without exception. For those who harbor fear and reticence that comes from those with even greater power, we ask for your courage and protection. For those who are actively working against our most vulnerable children, we ask for repentance.
Fuck you, lady. Straight up. You are praying to the God of government, asking for government school. I'm so nauseated by this nastiness. These evil people. That's what evil looks like. It comes in the form of a lunatic leftist woman asking for accessibility and for tolerance. And would you not have the courage to do the right thing? I rarely let that stuff just sneak out on me, but that wells up. And I know this is an issue right now that it's going out in the broader sphere because you got CNN running this. Countries are issuing travel advisories for trans people who might come to the United States. What countries are these? Denmark, Finland, Germany, Ireland? Really, Ireland? You're going to have a reckoning too. The Netherlands and Portugal. Cool. They're all advising that there is danger for transgender people coming here. How about this? There's danger for real women in America because of this absolute nonsense. Two stories back to back. They're not related, except in my mind, I saw them as I was perusing all of them. Prosecutors have dropped the charge against the man that Nancy Mace says assaulted her at the Capitol, right? This is a guy who's a transgender activist. And her statement was, if a man can physically assault a woman in the halls of Congress, which we know can happen, with impunity, it sends an appalling message to women in America everywhere. They were ignored, the charges. She's not going to say, I'm not a huge Nancy Mace fan. She's part of the problem, whether you guys realize it or not. She stepped into what? The Citadel. She walked into a man's space. She brought women into men's spaces. Do not be surprised when you invade male areas that you are going to see men now feel like returning the favor. Not good men, by the way. Shitty men. Awful men. Weak men will go do that. I saw another video of a woman yesterday who took a knee, very awkwardly and uncomfortably, but good on her, refused to fight a man in a fencing competition that was dressed up like a woman. But the crazy thing is that CNN is 100% backing this person. NBC News writes this story. I'm absolutely going to stand in the way of every man who wants to go into a women's locker room. That's what Nancy Mace said. So, of course, you got to cover what this guy says. And the guy says that that trans youth are also foster youth and they need your support. Gross. Absolutely disgusting. This is nauseating stuff. He said he's pleased but surprised that the baseless charges have been dropped. He didn't say that himself. He went to a state rep because he has access to state representatives because the official people in power on the Democrat side all get involved in this evil stuff. And on top of that, now you got a federal judge in Montana, of all places, has sided with the 7 people in the state that want to use women's bathrooms that have penises. And so anti-transgender, again, even the phrasing of this, anti-transgender bathroom restrictions. No. How about pro-woman? How about woman-only bathroom restrictions? They're now on hold because a judge can't actually recognize God's reality. Insane. Absolute batshit craziness. Here's another story. This one's NBC as well. transgender patients and their healthcare providers. They're fearing a worsening discrimination. And here's all these weirdos standing out there with weird signs that are very professionally made. They have professional artwork. They've got money and backing behind them. They're so marginalized that they can stand there in the middle of the day and protest. Who pays these people to be out there? How can they afford to do that when I can't afford to do that, and neither can you? You can't go out there and spend all day doing nothing. These are young people. These are working age people. They're worried about having heart attacks. And they're transgender, and they're going to be looked at differently when they go in and they lie about the physical reality of their body. If you guys want to understand why this is a problem, go back and listen to the interview we did with Dr. Atam Heim when we talked about going into, let's say you drove into Detroit, but you only had a map of Chicago. That'd be problematic for you. If someone comes in claiming to be a female and they are actually a male, the anatomy is different. You have the wrong map, even in your head, and you're going to have to adjust on the fly when you start seeing things like, oh, those aren't ovaries. Is that a cyst? We're going to remove them. Oh, it turns out. No, we're looking at the wrong thing. Medical reality is a reality. And so then I'm going to get you to this little piece right here. This Supreme Court decision that is going to be coming down at some point is being argued today. Catholic vote on the bottom tells us Supreme Court hears oral arguments on states' rights to refuse Medicaid funds to abortion providers. One of the most fair articles I found. And then the alternative, the ABC headline, which says... Sorry, that looks like CBS, doesn't it? It is. It's a CBS headline. I could just tell because of the darkness. Supreme Court grapples with South Carolina's bid to defund Planned Parenthood. You're like, oh, defund. Do we want that? Is that okay? Even the name Planned Parenthood. How about planned murder of your baby? You've chosen not to have a child by destroying a life. Gross. I still think back to my buddy who didn't even have a decision. He just got married and dropped out of college and lost his scholarship and went on to go out there and do the right thing because that's what men used to do when they picked up burdens and they could actually do so. And then you've done this thing. All of this stuff feels very related to me, especially today. This is what the Alliance Defending Freedom, the senior counsel, went and argued in a press briefing. Said that he's arguing on behalf of the Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, where they said they want to pull the money away from Planned Parenthood, says that they are engaged in performing abortions and providing dangerous gender transition drugs that is not comprehensive health care. According to its own reporting, Planned Parenthood performs between 1/3 and 2/3 of all abortions nationally in the United States every year. And its provisions for other healthcare services have declined drastically. Preventative care visits have dropped by 31%. The number of patients seen annually have fallen by 60% since the 90s, and they're getting more and more of our money. They're not doing cancer screenings or prevention services. Those have dropped by 71% since 2010. They are not doing healthcare. They're doing baby killing. That's what they do. And the state is deciding whether or not they want to use the federal funds that are assigned to people who are indigent and how they're going to use those. That's what Medicaid does, people who can't afford it. And they're not going to spend the money on gender-affirming nonsense or killing off babies in the state. That's their choice. In theory, it's a states' rights issue, I think. That makes sense. Again, why are Democrats excited about judges? Because judges do this too. A judge in Boston holding a hearing on whether or not the Tufts PhD student, this is a radical pro-Palestinian lady, and the fact of the matter is she's here on a visa, a student visa. She's not here to write editorials. She's not here to go out there and try to whip up fervor. She's not there to try to get rid of Jews. She's not there to do any of this stuff. And if she is injuring America's relationship with an ally, whether you like it or not, America has an allegiance, an alliance to Israel as a national ally. You don't have to like it. I'm just telling you what the policy is. And the Trump policy is very clear on this. If you're going to damage international relations, then you don't have a right to have a visa. That's actually a reason that you can have it pulled. And so the judge is trying to say, well, she must be kept in Massachusetts. It turns out ICE has facilities all over the place. The woman was already transported to various different things, kind of like J6ers were, where you get moved around a lot. They call it diesel therapy, whether it's punitive or not. Maybe there's a good reason. She's been moved to a facility in Louisiana. And the federal judge in Boston, they're saying has no more jurisdiction there. She's outside of the district. Adios. So you're going to see the Trump administration go head-to-head about this, because the judge is going to try to claim that this person should be brought back. In the same way a judge said someone who was deported out of this country and no longer is in United States control, is in El Salvador, needs to be brought back to Maryland. Why? Because they didn't like the way that it went down. Too bad, I guess. That'll take us to our last little story of insanity, which here we're actually kind of on a nice schedule here of cleaning these things up. How about How about the craziest thing you can imagine? Imagine if this is the teacher that your child had for sophomore English in high school. His name is Zachary Sandry. There he is. He's got a beard. He's got long hair. He's got glasses. He looks a lot like, I don't know, like a high school English teacher. If I was going to say, what does a high school English teacher looks like? He looks like Zachary Sandry. That guy right there. I blurred out the name, his email address and his phone number on there. So that's the only thing I'm redacting. Okay. So that's Zachary Sandry. And you'd think that's not a big deal. Okay. And then you get the fact that Zachary decided to start dressing up like a lady and calling himself Rosie. You tell me if it's okay that this guy who's teaching high school students in Texas, America at Red Oak High School can turn around and start walking into the school like this. Are you going to keep this person employed?
Hi, I'm Rosie, Texas English teacher and transgender goddess, here with just a couple of thoughts about some gender euphoria that I've been feeling today. So for those of you that don't know, gender euphoria is the feeling you get when you finally feel comfortable in your gender, when something good happens and it just brings you a lot of joy and calm. And it's been happening to me a lot today. This morning, when I stopped at the gas station for my morning energy drink, I got ma'amed, which is so funny because I know that there are a lot of women who really don't like being called ma'am, but I like it a lot. It's so new to me and it's so wonderful. And it was such a small thing to make me this happy. And then at school today, I'm surrounded by kids. I teach sophomores and I have these 15, 16-year-olds who are completely on board, who, when I told them I had changed my pronouns, jumped right into it. They call me ma'am, they call me miss. They use my correct pronouns and know my correct name. And it is incredibly affirming. So I guess my message here is if you have any trans people in your life, it is so easy to show them love. So easy. All you have to do is respect them.
Perverting words like love and courage and doing throws through government schools, which means we all have to pay for it so that you can indoctrinate this absolute crazy BS. Yeah, let's not do that. So this person, Zachary, who's decided to go by Rosie, there's a side-by-side. Doesn't look like a woman. That's woman face. I don't know any women that dress like that look like that put on this costume of like pretending. It's so disgusting that somebody would go, hey man, sounds like you got a real problem going on. And I am seriously sad that this is happening in your mind. We are not going to go out there and lie to you and lie to our kids and confuse them and pretend like this is normal or real. We're not going to do it. And so he posted that video, did he not? On TikTok. Libs of TikTok did what Libs of TikTok does. Boost the signal of someone who wanted to be affirmed as a female, only to find out that nobody wants to affirm that sort of crazy. And it's very off-putting to parents who probably didn't know better. And parents who didn't want to say something. So what happened next? It's predictable. Thankfully, because we are starting to swing back and heal a little bit. Tariffs, do it. Eliminate some of this nonsense. Expose. And then get them to resign. Do I need this guy to be out of work? No, he needs to go and have like some meaningful burden in his life. He just can't be around kids because you've shown mental illness. This is not where you're going to be. You don't have a right to be around your kids. And listen to him say it about that. Here's the aftermath of this because yeah, he did resign.
I do want to share with you the one tragedy that I see in all of this, and that is this. I never had the opportunity to say goodbye to my students. This happened so quickly, I was not allowed back in the classroom. And the one thing that breaks my heart right now is I will never get to tell all of these students the impact that they have had on me.
Narcissism on me. The only thing is they are my students. No, those are our children. They are not your students. So F off, weirdo. Horrible stuff. Anyway, it's a slight move back. I've never seen a woman do the red eye thing, whatever the hell that is like a anime. Autogynephilia is a real thing, folks. Men having a sexual interest in having seen themselves as a woman is a real mental illness, it seems like. And it needs to be called out. The fact that I can access this stuff without I didn't have to do any work at all to find this. That is a truly sad moment in our times. That dude needs a shovel in his hand to go out there and be told, hey, dude, get to work. He'd be much happier off. Maybe we can connect him with Mike Rose Foundation. Sounds like he needs a job. Maybe he'll be a pipe fitter and knock that stuff off. It was actually probably a good thing. Like, shame is something we've talked about. There's value in shame because they enforce cultural norms. We've abandoned it. It's time to have it back. The other thing that's really good is comedy. I love comedy. So we're going to do a little bit of comedy as usual in our palate cleanse right now before we finish it off. You can find the program at rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. If you ever want to see the best live chat on the internet, that is where you go. Friendliest community, most interesting discussions, parallel to what we're talking about. You can also see it over on YouTube, where we've been growing, youtube.com/@Kyle Seraphin. Same thing on X, it's @Kyle Seraphin. The local show, where I will actually go and put some of these clips, including the cross-eyed bear today. You can find it. It's locals. It's KyleSeraphin.com, and we do our locals call-in program tonight. So if you guys want to join us for that, it's at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And then lastly, if you want to share the show, KyleSeraphinShow.com, just that simple link will bring up us on Spotify. The app is a free download. It's a free either stream or view. Doesn't have to even take up any space on your phone. And you can get audio or video doing that. So we really do appreciate you guys liking and sharing and subscribing and telling your friends about the show, because we're going to try to have fair and balanced takes here and try to connect some dots as usual. This is not so much a dot as something that made my wife laugh hysterically. And if my wife thinks this is hysterical, probably will make many of you laugh. This guy might be one of the funniest people in comedy right now. His name is Andrew Schultz. Hysterical. And since I've been seeing so much about how the Jews are the problem and the right-wing people now have decided they've landed on the Jews, this is a really funny thing about how Arabs and Jews are essentially doing the same thing that Muslims are trying to out-Jew the Jews. I don't know. This made me crack up too. So enjoy this as a little taste as you go off into your Thursday.
What I'm trying to say is, outside of America, it's only religious people that get circumcised. Obviously, Jews do it. Jews invented it. Abraham, he was like, yo, this is a covenant between you and God. This is how God knows you're down. If you want to be part of the tribe, I'm going to need that. His words, not mine. Okay, now, to be fair, I don't think he was opening with this. You know what I mean? I think he was like, yo, everybody gets a hat. Friday's off. It's fire. And 2 weeks later, he's like, now I need the calamari. What the fuck is this guy talking about calamari? So Jews got to do it. Jews got to do it. Christians don't have to. Jesus came around, he was like, yo, Abe was wildin'. My man liked the end of baby dicks. It's weird. Spoke to Pops, we don't need to do it anymore. Then Muslims come around, bring it back. Throwback jersey, vintage. We got some Muslims here tonight? All right, so you guys know why you do it. Non-Muslims usually don't, but the reason why Muslims circumcise is because Muslims are always trying to out-Jew the Jews. This is a sibling rivalry as old as time. Like, how many times a day do they pray? We'll pray 5 times a day. Fuck it, let's go. How many days do they not eat? We won't eat for the whole month. We'll take the fucking whole month. They just circumcised the boys?
That's pretty awful. That's why comedy works. That's why humor is such a good, important tool. It points out something true when you start looking at it. And by the way, for all of you that have been going out there and following Cameron Smith, appreciate that. The guy that sat down with me over the weekend, we had a great time. We talked about Swamp Monsters. I see some of you guys are ordering it. He just hit me up this morning with a thank you, saying so many of you have gone out and ordered the game. He said orders are rolling in, and that's really cool. That wasn't necessarily the point of our sit down. He's just a neat guy with an interesting perspective on it. But since you guys are ordering it, I think it's really cool too. If you want to support people who have your same sense of humor, which is a little bit sick if you listen to me. We probably share that same sick sense of humor. You probably laughed at that too. So there's something wrong with you. That thing is called going back a long ways. That's how we all used to be. We used to laugh at stuff that was funny. All right. God bless all of you. I mean that. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you guys are sticking around, we'll put you into the AMRAD podcast. It's at AMRAD Pod over on X. And if you guys want to see it on Rumble, we'll dump in there right now under a raid. And I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for Friendly Friday.
Thanks for listening to the Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.